Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so
Right.
hello everyone. Thank you for joining March's SAP Garage call. I am very excited that this is going to be one of our very first calls that we are hosting one of our SAP partners. So we have Accelerated S2P on the call, and they are going to be talking to us about their application that was built with SAP BTP for digitizing supplier invoices. It's called Invoice Intelligence Express. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to go into which mission we're going to be covering today. So this is the mission Digitize Supplier Invoices with a Compliant e-invoice process. And you can access that in the SAP Discovery Center. We will put a link to that in the chat, as well as the recording to this call will be available on our SAP Garage website, as always, along with the link to the recordings on the SAP Garage website. I'll put that in the chat after I'm done. To kick off, we also have in the call later today, we had Ramesh and Natalia that will be joining, but unfortunately, Ramesh had a last minute travel that came up. So I want to thank Joe and Matt and Eugene that are all joining us today for the APJ call for kind of stepping in for them and also being able to still host this call for the APJ time zone. So thank you very much to them. And we will start off by going over the use case, talking about the benefits of their application. They'll go into a demo, and then as always, we'll have the Q&A at the end. So feel free to type your questions into the chat during the call, but as always, we'll reserve time at the end for them to take those questions. So with that, I will hand over to Joe and Matt and Eugene. So please introduce yourselves, tell us a little what you're doing at Accelerated S2P, and then go ahead and jump into your presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Cecily. A warm welcome to everyone who's on the call today. Thanks for taking time out to learn a little bit more about our solution, which, as Cecily said, is built on the SAP BTP platform. My name is Joe Bellafiore. My role is as Regional General Manager for Accelerated Source to Pay for the Asia Pac region. I'm based in Melbourne, as you can see in the background, still working from home, but slowly making my way back into the office. So I'll just let the rest of the team introduce themselves, and then we'll just get straight into the show today.
Great, thanks, Joe. My name is Matthew Fisher. Hello, everybody. I've been in the procure to pay space for just over 20 years now. Had the pleasure of working with a wide variety of companies and a wide variety of technologies, and done a lot of work with SAP Ariba, and specifically around supplier-facing technologies. So this application, we have a suite of applications, but this one is my favorite. Don't tell anyone, just because of the value it provides to suppliers to make their lives easier. So excited to give you guys an overview and get stuck in. Eugene?
Hi, everyone. My name is Eugene, and as it says, I'm the solution architect for IIE. I was a part of the development team in the UK, but I've now moved over into the APAC region, so I'm supporting the guys here. Yeah.
Great. Okay. What we want to take you through today, talk a little bit about what is Intelligent Invoice Express and why it is such a great solution, how it can help to add value to the whole accounts payable and P2P process. So we'll go into a little bit more detail of the solution itself and see how it works. Then we'll jump straight into the demo. Eugene will take you through a couple of most common scenarios that we come across and show you how the solution deals with that. Talk a little bit about what deployment looks like and implementation, and then we'll definitely carve out some time at the end for Q&A. But again, like, we invite questions along the way. Please post them into the chat. We'll answer them. If we, for whatever reason, can't answer them here, we'll take them offline and provide a response back to Cecily and Andreas and the team to share with the audience. Okay, so let's get into it, Matt. Let's get straight through. So why, and the challenge that we do find with quite a lot of customers with respect to really digitizing invoices for all suppliers. And what do we mean by that? So typically when we're involved in looking at P2P transformations, the immediate focus always goes to, let's look at our suppliers that have got the largest volumes of transactions, and let's obviously find a way to automate that, and then rightly so, right? We want to be able to deliver as much value as possible, but inevitably what happens is there's such a laser focus on the large volume suppliers that there isn't a lot of consideration given to that tail end of suppliers, and that tail can be significantly long, as we know, from a procurement spend perspective. We also know that for whatever the reasons are, when suppliers have the option and the opportunity to use the powerful SAP Ariba Business Network, there'll always be a percentage of suppliers, again, for some reason, that choose not to transact through the business network. And we identified this as I guess, as both a gap and an opportunity to say, how do we provide for a simple mechanism for that tail end of suppliers to still be able to submit invoices and have them ingested in a digital way by our customers, so that no one really has to do any manual intervention, no keying in of those invoices for what tends to be a really, really long tail end of suppliers. When we go through deployments with our customers of P2P transformations, absolutely when we're through the project and even after the project, there's a huge focus on what we call supplier enablement and bringing more and more suppliers onto the network. But we know that that is definitely a journey. And whilst that is taking place, there's still quite a lot of suppliers that don't have a simple mechanism to be able to get invoices and submit invoices in a digital, simple way to customers to really help provide 100% coverage of all invoices and digitize all invoices, not just those for suppliers with high transactional volumes. And that's what we've identified and developed with IIE, right? It is effectively another channel, another medium that you can make available to your suppliers to submit invoices and consume them in a digital fashion straight into your invoice management solution, whether that is SAP Ariba Invoice Management, or whether that's going straight into your finance ERP for whether that's ECC or S4HANA, where invoice management and exceptional handling is taking place. But it's a nice option and a really easy option to give suppliers, and it complements actually the supplier enablement strategy of being able to slowly migrate more and more suppliers over to the business network. But they can first start off by simply emailing PDF invoices straight through to Intelligent Invoice Express. And then they can take that next step of maturity by joining the business network. So the typical kind of use cases that we come across, and I've touched on some of them, but we see and talk to lots of our customers, and have spoken to lots of our customers today and our prospects as well around, where we talk to AP, where there's a lot of time and effort spent on, manually dealing with invoices or manually keying invoices in that are coming from suppliers. Challenges in terms of them being able to pay those suppliers on time, and then being able to also reconcile that there's invoices within the solution as well. As I touched on earlier, there's been a challenge there with still continuing to drive a strong supplier enablement program and getting more and more suppliers transacting onto the business network, and then having a single source of truth for invoice processing. How can we enable that for our customers and our prospects? They're kind of the typical challenges that we tend to come across and solution for with Intelligent Invoice Express. And what it does is it does remove that manual intervention, right? There's no need for someone to be opening up envelopes and keying in invoices, or receiving invoices via a PDF email and then having to open that and then key that into an invoicing solution. We eliminate all of that altogether. We simplify that whole process completely. We go to completely touchless invoice posting. We have powerful automation within our solution that not only scans, but also augments additional information from the invoice and then presents that into the invoice management solution. So no one has to do any manual intervention or keying at all. I mean, a huge benefit is absolutely for the supplier. It's easy, it's free, there's no training, there's no onboarding. We find most suppliers today, are already sending a PDF email to an email address. We just give them a new email address to do that to. We're done. That is the end of the extent of the training and the comms that's required. It's a cloud-based solution. We proudly built the solution on the SAP BTP platform. That means it can be deployed very, very quickly. We can stand it up extremely quickly, and you can start to generate value extremely quickly. We recently completed a pretty significant deployment of Intelligent Invoice Express to a really large US-based global investment fund. All the challenges that I touched on earlier were being faced by our customers. So a significant amount of tail invoices where suppliers were sending those invoices via email. AP were tied up with manual data entry. Invoices were getting missed. There was obviously data entry issues. So data quality was a major problem. And that was leading to lack of payment of suppliers, poor visibility from a finance perspective. And it was a huge bottleneck being created in the AP department. So we work very closely with our customer and did a proof of concept of Intelligent Invoice Express, and they loved it and said, yeah, let's go. So we've now deployed the solution to them. And we're processing over 1,500 PDF invoices per week. We've seen 75% reduction in those cycle times, over 95% capture accuracy as well. And that continues to grow and get stronger and stronger with more and more volumes that we're putting through the solution itself. Thank you, Matt. Great, so let's take a look at the solution in a little bit more detail and get into some of the mechanics. Cool, Matt, I'll hand over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. All right, so how does this work? And this is extremely simple. We're going to show, we'll talk through how it works from different perspectives, but it's a very easy solution, and it's a pleasure to deploy and a pleasure to use. So suppliers, they all have email, right? So some of them may not know how to spell CXML and B2B and EDI, but they know how to send an email. And the majority of suppliers, even ones in, we've deployed this solution to multiple countries globally where digital adoption is relatively low. But we can all agree that email and sending an attachment is pretty standard. So it starts with allowing your suppliers to say, hey, moving forward, we want you to start emailing your invoices to this email address, okay? The only ask of the supplier is to send an email to a specific address, and this can be your company's email address. So we can securely poll a variety of email systems. And so it could be like einvoices@acme.com. And the only ask of the supplier is just attach a PDF invoice in there. We don't need to give them a certain template. They don't need to abide by certain, you don't have to really ask them to do anything more detailed than that. They send an email to that address. We then pull that email account and we pull out the PDF attachment. We pull out the metadata from the email as well, anything to help us identify who that supplier is and what is inside this invoice. And in the first version of our solution, it was very much template and rule-based driven. It was very much look in the corner for this field and pull that. And we very quickly pivoted and said, listen, it's 2021. It's got to be a better way. So we've leveraged machine learning. We got rid of the emphasis on templates and the needing to tell suppliers exactly what to send. So we leverage machine learning to extract that invoice data. We then have tight integration with SAP's backend systems, whether that be Ariba invoicing, ECC, S4, and others we shall not mention. But we do that in order to, we're not just going to blindly take an invoice and push it into your system. We're going to make sure that we identify the supplier correctly, the type of invoice. We can pull purchase order information, start to compare the purchase order information. We can enrich that invoice if need be. All right, so if something is missing, but we know it's a certain GL account or commodity code, then we can train the system to say, if this, then that. And the machine learning will actually take over beyond just the original guidance. But then we push that data, so whether it be in CXML or IDOC, it doesn't matter. We take that information out of everything out of that invoice, map it to the appropriate fields for the invoice management system, and push it into your invoice management system, and it looks like any other invoice. We also include the actual invoice attachment. So that way, if your AP wants to take a look at what was sent, then they can bring it up within that tool. But the thing here is that this is extremely streamlined. We're not looking to replace your invoice management system. We're not looking to have two systems that your AP team goes into. This truly is a new channel of ingestion to get it where it needs to go. And then any exception handling or all the business rules that you have in place all stay the same. So no changes whatsoever. Literally, it's plug and play in terms of that. It's like it looks the same to your AP team. And then one thing we can do is, because it depends on the customer, right? We have some customers that use this for their tail end suppliers, and they're strategic suppliers. They say, listen, you really need to use the network. We have some customers that make IIE available as an option to anybody. And the reason why we can do that is we can actually identify if this supplier is on the network and they have an account already. And we can say, oh, okay, so you've opted to send us an invoice this way rather than a PO flip or EDI. We can push a carbon copy of this invoice back up to the network so it shows in their outbox. So they have one place, regardless of how they transmitted the invoice to us. So when we built this solution, we worked very closely with SAP to make sure that this was a complementary product, a complementary offering to the business network, rather than a competing one. Digging a little bit deeper, some of the concepts involved here is that capture. And again, version 1 was template driven and traditional OCR. We then upgraded to true machine learning. We have the ability of consuming multiple formats. We recommend sticking with PDF, ideally even PDF/A readable, but we do have the ability to consume in various formats as well. We support localization, so we're receiving thousands and thousands of invoices from multiple countries across multiple languages, so that's not an issue for us. And then with each passing month, our configurability increases. The ability to allow IIE to get smarter and smarter. So we have one customer, for example, that says, listen, I got some suppliers in a particular industry that by design, they need to send us an invoice number that contains a certain date as well as the invoice number. But we say, no problem. We don't need to tell them to do anything different. We can add logic to say, pull this out, parse it, and push it to the appropriate field. So that's an example of the kind of configurability that we can have in IIE before it even gets to your downstream system. We can do things like tax code determination. We can apply GL codes. Now, again, it's not meant to be a full-fledged invoicing system, but anything that we can do to enrich and enhance that invoice before it even gets to you, we will do. And then we talked about the machine learning. Obviously, monitoring this is important. So we can generate reports that say, this is how the system is going. There's nothing to really log into. So Eugene will give us a demo here in a minute to show you essentially a dashboard, a monitoring dashboard. It's not another AP system, but because everything passes through our system, we have rich reporting capabilities to give you some data as how things are flowing in. And then in terms of, pushing into your invoice management system, we have flexibility as well. So we leverage existing APIs. So whatever workflow you want it to be, some customers want it to be, posted. Some of it want it to be held in a certain status. Some of it wanted if this, then that, in terms of, making sure that these scenarios require looking at versus these just 100% pass through. So we have lots of flexibility in terms of pushing into your invoice management system. Okay, so one more diagram. and then we'll get into it here shortly. So if we look at how does Intelligent Invoice Express complement your architecture when it comes to the SAP Business Network. So here at the bottom of the screen, we have the business network with its wealth of scenarios, wealth of ways to consume invoice data, whether that be online PO flip, CXML, EDI, all that continues to happen. And we continue to support that as being the ideal channel of collaborating with suppliers. And then IIE simply becomes a parallel path, okay? So whether inviting all your suppliers or a select set, they can start emailing those invoices through IIE. We then pull out that PDF invoice, we extract it, we enrich it, we push it into push it into invoicing, and we can pull Ariba buying in this scenario to help with supplier identification and help with enrichment. And then optionally, we can carbon copy that invoice to the Ariba network. So it truly is complementary. And then, no two customers are ever the same. So whether it's OpenText Vim, whether it's Ariba Invoice Management, whether it's ECC or S4, we eat integrations for breakfast. So we can integrate this system with any invoice management system. All right, so now let's take a look at the flow. I'm just going to walk you through the flow at a little bit more detail level, and then we'll get Eugene to take over. So here we have an example of IIE in action with Ariba invoicing being a scenario. We have a screenshot here of the email sent to a particular email address with a PDF attachment. They don't need to put anything specific in the subject, anything specific in the body. We're flexible that way. This is a screenshot of the IIE monitoring dashboard with the steps that we take. We identify who that supplier is, extract the information out, put it into our augmentation tool, enrich it if need be, and then push it on to your invoice management system. Here we have a screenshot of Ariba invoicing with all the data that's pushed across. Anything that's in that invoice is going to get pushed into your invoice system. And then your workflow remains the same, and your AP team or anybody on the invoicing side can actually pull up that invoice and see the real source of truth. And there's the attachments attached. And then similarly, if you're using ECC or S4, same concepts, they email it, same steps. And this time it gets pushed into ECC with all that rich data. And they too can actually bring up the attachments list and see the actual PDF that was sent. All right, so now that we have an understanding as to how this all works, we're going to turn it over to Eugene. And Eugene's going to walk through 3 typical scenarios for us. One is if you are leveraging a purchase requisitioning tool to create purchase orders and send those to suppliers, then the common scenario is going to be an invoice against that purchase order. So we're going to show you how IIE pulls that purchase order information, the PO number, the PO line number, and then pushes it in for reconciliation. And then it's inevitable that there are going to be exceptions, right? One thing doing supplier enablement for 22 years is you're going to see the entire gamut of scenarios, right? Supplier does this, supplier doesn't do that. So we're going to show you some examples of how IIE helps to handle or address those scenarios. And then we'll finish with a non-PO invoice, right? So we have some customers that want to use IIE for both PO and non-PO, and we'll show you how that can flow into ECC in that 3rd scenario. So hopefully that makes sense, and we'll turn it over to Eugene, and then afterwards we'll talk about deployment, what it takes to make this happen, and take your questions. Eugene?
Thanks, Matt. Again, this is to read what Joe and Matt said. This is going to be a very simple demo. It's very straightforward to use IIE, and I'll demonstrate now. So let me just quickly share my screen. And it's as simple as starting off with drafting up your emails. In this case, we're showing, demonstrating, submitting to two different systems. We're submitting to both an Ariba system as well as ECC backend. So those three scenarios that Matt mentioned earlier. So again, for expediency, as a part of the setup, what IIE does is poll the configured mailbox, and in our test system, that polling takes time. So what I'll do is I'll just submit one for the SAP system just to kind of show you, but just give you an idea that it's as simple as attaching an invoice to the configured mailbox and sending it off. It's as easy as that. So what you've all been waiting to see is the dashboard. So this is Intelligence Invoice Express. In this case, I'm showing there's two different systems that I'm actually showing you. So this tenancy, this is our tenancy that's connected to our SAP backend, and we also have a tenancy that's connected to our Ariba backend. Okay, so in the first example, which is this one, which is Ariba sample 2. I'll just click into here.
And actually, there's while you're there, Eugene, there's a question from Nick that wanted to see what an example of that invoice looked like. So Nick, here you go. Here's an example of a PDF invoice. And again, the cool thing is because of our machine learning capabilities, it doesn't have to adhere to a strict format. So it's any type of standard invoice will suffice. And the reason why we're so confident that we can do this is with each customer, with each invoice that flows through our system, and there's literally hundreds of thousands now, billions of dollars worth of invoices have flown through our engine. And it just gets smarter and smarter and smarter. It's never starting from scratch. So if we have a scenario here in this example that the system has learned needs to handle, then you and your customers, if you're a partner, will benefit from the fact that our system can support that previous scenario. So anyways, that's an example of a PDF invoice. Go ahead, Eugene.
Thanks, Matt. Yep. So just continue on with showing what's shown in the tool. So basically, every step of processing is visible. So from your person who you allocate to monitor, they can come in and they can see specifically at what step the processing has happened, and at each step you can identify, you can see more information as you click through each of the processing steps. The ingestion is just registering the transaction. The identification step is identifying the supplier. The extraction is leveraging that machine learning OCR engine, which extracts all that data out of the PDF. And as Matt was saying before, the augmentation step, that is the enrichment. That's the validation that can happen behind the scenes if required. And then the last step being the submission. So in this case, we see that it's been submitted successfully. So it's as simple as that. Just going to get back to the dashboard. You'll have to excuse me, that's just taking a bit of time. There we go. So what I'll do is I'll fast forward to, since we know that that's submitted to the Ariba backend, I will show that in the system. So that is this one, which we have seen that is reconciled and processed. So that was our first example. Great, sorry, I'll just minimize this. Great. And we can see here, this is the invoice submitted into Ariba. And the important thing to note here is that for your AP who needs to verify and make sure that what's being submitted is correct, all the relevant attachments are included in with the submission. So as you can see, not only do we have a copy of the email body of what was sent, we also have augmentation information if any augmentation had occurred during the processing, and we have the original documentation. So that is, and you can view that here, screw fix, $25. So it's crystal clear in terms of what's being submitted. Okay. I can.
And just to reconfirm, you know, for those of you, who have built or have used other applications built upon BTP, you'll recognize kind of the design elements. And by design, because the only people that would be ever logging into what you just saw would be potentially your Ariba administrator or your AP technical liaison. If they wanted to get under the hood and actually take a look at the very detailed mapping and the logic, then they could come in here and dig in. But it's not meant to be, by design, another system that the AP team have to go into. So it truly is, while this is the IE demo, what we're really demonstrating when we show these screens are the monitoring capabilities, rather than, as you can see, there's no buttons here to push. There's nothing to action. It's a monitoring tool. Thanks, Eugene.
Thanks, Matt. The second example is where we're demonstrating where Ariba has picked up some errors from the data that's been sent. So here again, I'll just show, just for clarity, it's this following PDF 2011003 R101, great naming. As you can see here, it's gone through the identification process. It's successfully gone through the OCR and augmentation and through to submission. So what I'll do is I'll jump straight back into Ariba and show, and we can see here, because this is linked to the current user that's logged in into Ariba, we can see here the status that it's submitted with errors. So we can go into that and we can see here, again, we verified that the following attachments are correct. These are the same thing. We've got the augmentation, we've got the original PDF as well as the original email. Okay, so if we just scroll down, we can see the line items. And I'll just go through the history reference. That's I believe that's correct. Sorry, I just have to scroll back.
And while Eugene is just familiarizing himself with that example, here's the deal, right? While IE has proven, over a lengthy period of time and tons of invoices that it works, it can consume the invoice data, it can map it correctly and push it. It's inevitable that there are going to be discrepancies. You are going to ask, customers ask us to put some rules in place to say, if this is missing. So for example, you have one customer that wants to make sure every invoice has an Australia business number, an ABN number on it. So we have a rule in place that looks for that ABN. And if it's not there, then we still consume that invoice, we still push it, but then we'll flag it, right? We'll flag it with a certain status within your invoice management system to say, hey, ABN is missing. So we want it to be realistic and not just show you and claim that this is going to eliminate all your exceptions. That's not reality. But what this does do is get that invoice in without them having to register on the network, without them having to be B2B integrated. And then all the business scenarios that you're facing today that, for a wide variety of different use cases, whatever those business rules you have in place will kick in, and we'll make sure that we communicate with the invoice management system appropriately.
Thanks, Matt. Sorry, just to clarify with the second example, it's gone through an approval, what is an approval flow within the system. So that may have been configured because of the amount that was submitted. And we can see in the current summary that it's going through an approval status. So that's my understanding of this transaction. But we can see here that all the information that was submitted through IE is all there. Okay. And the third example, so I'll just switch back to our system. So that was our Ariba system. So in this tenancy is our ECC system. So if I just quickly refresh that screen, you'll see from earlier in the very beginning of the demo, I sent an email with the PDF attached, and we can see here that the transaction has registered successfully. So if we just click through, we can see here that we have all the information again. I'm basically just repeating myself over and over again, because as we've said, the dashboard it's for the most part hands off, and it's only just for informational purposes. So there's not really anything that you can do other than just to check the PDF that was submitted and just check what was extracted from the PDF. And here we can just see, just for clarity, this is the sort of information that's available to your admin or to your user if they need to see what was extracted from the PDF through to Augmentation. We can also show that in raw form or in tabular form. And all this information that you see here is what is also submitted into the backend as well. And just to wrap it up, yep, we can see here that the invoice has been sent successfully. What I will do is I will just copy that and go into our ECC system. So in this case, we are in D8. Excuse me, just.
For those of us that don't know how to spell ECC, do you want to just walk through what you're doing there?
What I'm doing here is just checking the basically it's just a SAP backend, really. Great. So if I just pull the invoice, we can see here that that was posted today. And just as importantly as in Ariba, if I get that to show up, there we are. We can see the original PDF as well as the augmentation and the original PDF all attached.
Yeah, and one of the demonstration. Nice things,
yeah.
Thanks, Eugene. And one of the things I like about this is that we're a firm believer in providing as much information as possible to help make people's jobs empowered, right? So we don't just attach the actual PDF invoice, but we attach details on the augmentation. We attach whatever was in the email body as well, because maybe there was some relevant information that might help this AP person make a decision if there was some action required on this invoice. Cool. Well, thanks very much, Eugene. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
We'll just go back to the deck and just wrap up with some details on the deployment and what's involved. Go ahead and share my screen. All right. So in terms of deployment, it's, you know, we've deployed over 300 Ariba implementations around the world, and plenty of ECC and S4 app deployments. But so when it comes to deploying IE, it's almost like a breath of fresh air in terms of its simplicity. We literally, because it's an approved application on the SAP App Store, part of that standard is to make sure that it can be installed relatively quickly. And we actually provide a light version of this installation where the customer themselves can basically do the core installation of the application. But at typically, we don't just give give customers an app and say, there you go. There's some effort involved. So the majority of the effort is actually in testing, because we challenge our customers to say, we want you to identify as many different invoicing scenarios as you can come up with, especially the ones that are causing you the most pain, that are causing the most manual intervention, the pain in the butt suppliers that provide complex invoices. Give them to us, right? So we work with our customers to identify those scenarios and then put them through the system, right? And then tweak the system accordingly, tweak those business rules accordingly, make it smarter, make the augmentation smarter as needed to handle those scenarios. And then once the customer is comfortable, like, yep, that's enough testing. We've checked through all these scenarios, we're good. And some customers do it in phases. They may say, okay, we're going to enable this group of suppliers that has these scenarios. Yeah, so the majority of the time really is more around that optimization and testing. And in terms of supplier enablement, it's a dream. It's really a single email to a supplier just saying, from now on, start emailing your invoice in a PDF format to this address, and that's it. But digging a little bit deeper, and we'll provide this information to whoever wants it, in terms of the key deployment activities. Because it's running on BTP, it's very easy to stand up. We'll get some basic information from our customer around API access to Ariba invoicing or to ECC or S4, and the integration we own, and make sure that that's all nice and tight. We've done this many times now. And then it's about optimization. It's about testing. And that's it. That is Intelligent Invoice Express, one of our simplest but most powerful applications, and that one that complements the Ariba network or the SAP Business Network beautifully to allow us to enable e-invoicing with all of our suppliers on day one. With that, Joe, anything else to add before we open up for any questions?
No, let's take some questions. We've addressed a few in the chat, but yeah, if there's any additional ones, happy to take them.
And Cicely, we'll turn over to you to help facilitate.
There is one question I've seen pop up in the chat. So yeah, this is a cloud-based solution, so no, there is no hardware required. It's just a simple download of the solution from the SAP App Store. So yeah, definitely a SaaS solution. So thank you, Gupta, for that question.
I think there was one that was asked earlier as well by Vivek about what additional features does IIE offer in comparison to BTP platform, which hosts similar services to extract data from documents, set up workflow, and integrate with ERP. Did you cover that one already in the chat?
Yeah, I think we did, but happy to go back over it. I guess the things that we pride ourselves on the solution is, being able to use the connectors that we've built to reach back into your ERP or to reach back into SAP Ariba buying, for example, to help augment additional data like, validation of the vendor, purchase order information. So there's extensions within our own application beyond what's on BTP to make those things happen. And that really just helps to uplift the first pass of data that we're getting as we start to go over and scan through what's on the invoice and present it enriched with as much data as possible when we present it to ECC or into Ariba Invoice Management.
And just to add to that, I mean, obviously, whoever asked that question is smart enough to understand that there's components on the powerful SAP business technology platform that can do some basic things that can they're parts of our solution. And really what we've done is we've sewn it all together, right? We've taken our 20 years of experience with invoice enablement and made it extremely smart. We've leveraged a very powerful machine learning OCR engine and tied that into BTP. We've leveraged the tight integrations that we've mastered over the years into backend systems, and BTP kind of ties that all together. So, you know, it's kind of like you can go to Amazon Web Services and you can you know, get a server, but putting a solution in place that's this feature rich and this proven, you know, that's where we put a lot of effort into it. So, yep, it's built on BTP. BTP has those components that we're leveraging, but the configurability, the machine learning, and the integration really is the value add.
There's another great question, a couple of questions in the chat that I'll address. So first of all, Vivek just asked a question around licensing terms for the solution. So it's premised on invoice volumes. So that is the metric and the driver that determines the license fee. We'll share with you after this through the SAP team the link to the application on the SAP App Store. So it's a certified app on the SAP App Store today, which you can take a look at through that link. There's a very short demo in there, not as comprehensive as Eugene's, but it also contains the software license pricing in there as well. So we'll share that link straight after the meeting. Oh, there was also, sorry, another question from Mustafa Benson, just around the solution, whether that is deployed to the customer's BTP account or yours. So Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be on our BTP platform.
Correct.
So hopefully that answers those two questions. And probably, yeah, a good segue. Matt, do you want to just cover off quickly on the other apps that are on the App Store today that everyone can see?
Yeah, so we do have about a dozen on the app. We're not trying to upsell you. We just want to reassure you that we don't just do applications as a side job. We have a whole company that's wholly owned by Accelerate S2P in order to build these applications out. IIE is definitely one of our most popular because it fills that desperate need. But personally identifiable information protection, that's a mouthful, but PIP adds another layer of security for supplier lifecycle and performance management to encrypt more personal data. So this is very popular in Europe. We have a category management dashboard that really brings together disparate pieces of information to make it very consumable. Intelligent content capture, ICC, is a very exciting one that I was involved in building, and this allows people to do a search from within their guided buying solution or inside ECC and actually search across multiple supplier websites, whether they be enabled suppliers or non-enabled suppliers or even marketplaces, to bring back information to make non-catalog purchase requisitioning easier. Visual budget checker, also popular. Lightweight inventory management is proving extremely popular. And that's especially for ECC and S4 customers that maybe don't need to go full-blown inventory management, but they're just looking to do some basic lightweight inventory management. Then we help with that. And then we won't talk about A2O, but we can connect to basically any ERP or invoice management system.
Great, and I did thank you guys so much, really. I mean, it was an excellent demo, and I think you definitely convinced us with your confidence of the ability for it to do it, and it definitely fits to its name with intelligence invoicing. There were a couple of direct messages that came in on how they can implement the solution, so I do want to just point out again that the Discovery Center mission has all of the resources on licensing and additional FAQs and fact sheets and the link to the SAP store. So all of that information is there and available. If you start the mission, then that's where you can find it in the project board to find the additional resources or gather any additional information that you might need, as well as the contacts. So I will post that again. It does look like there's one more question that's come in, which is, could this work with Oracle Fusion?
Are we allowed to answer that?
Is that I thought that was going to be blacklisted from the questions, but if it's been allowed, we'll address it. But go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
The answer is we pride ourselves in being able to integrate with anything with everything. And that's the reason why SAP comes to us very often for the more complex scenarios when there's mixed technologies. So I'll leave it there. We're very confident that we can use Intelligent Invoice Express no matter what your landscape is. How's that for politically correct?
Thank you.
I think that was good.
So any last minute questions to come in? Okay, and if not, like I said, I will post again the link to the mission. I will post again the link to where you can find the recording for today's call. This call will again be offered again for the global call. So you can also take a look there or direct anybody else that you think would want to participate in the call later today. And again, I want to thank you guys so much for being our SAP partner and also for presenting in today's call. It was very helpful, very exciting to see what's out there and what's available. So thank you guys so much from Accelerated STP for your presentation. And like you said, if you have any additional resources you want us to share with the audience, of course, just send those over to me and Toros, and we will make sure that they get out to everybody on the subscription list. And thank you, everybody, for joining today's call.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.